I wanted to have a profession that I enjoyed doing and could do for the rest of my life. And what I'm doing right now, I get up every day excited about it. I'm grateful to be alive, you know. You want me to start?
Yeah, absolutely. Roll.
Okay, you're rolling now. All right. You know, as a kid, the thing that I was most fascinated with was, just the natural world. I have six siblings in the family. I was number 5. And so my older siblings, had, going in school, I was like 5 years old. But, when they came home, brought books home, history books, science books, all kinds of things like that. I was always, curious about them. Pictures, picture books were the things that really excited me. I spent a lot of time just observing pictures and these illustrated books by famous illustrators. I didn't know who they were at the time. I just knew somebody was creating these pictures. And I just absorbed as much as I could. Just interested me. And I was just a bookworm for a lot of years as a little kid. Give me a book, I was happy. It was fascinating to me to walk into a library and see all of these books and start to read about science and the natural world, history, and that's where all of my interest began. But then when World Book Encyclopedia came into the house.
3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
I have an aunt that was a librarian at public school, and she was encouraging my dad to get encyclopedias for us.
The sum of mankind's knowledge, unscrambled to make an encyclopedia children want to read, simply because they can understand it. World Book Encyclopedia, food for thought, in 20 volumes.
And when he did get that set of encyclopedias, that was, my world opened up, because I was the kid that sat quietly, and Mom said, you were the easiest to work with, because all I had to do was give you a book and you were fine. And then gradually, I think I was 7 years old when we got a TV. Wild Kingdom, and that was a nature show that I would sit and watch. And as I would watch TV, it wasn't like anybody had me to do it. It's just something I naturally did. Is picked up a pencil and started to draw as I saw things happening on the screen. And I always watched Tarzan on Saturday mornings. And that was always fun to see the animals, the chimpanzees and the elephants and so on. And it was just always something that drew me in, and it still does. David Attenborough, he's on in my studio constantly, daily. There's the cable TV and their programs. Nature shows, I have a big screen TV in my studio, and that's what's on my TV constantly. And while I'm working, and I can look up sometimes and observe things that really interest me. But that's the thing, my kids are like, Dad, do you want to watch anything else? I'm like, well, why? I'm good. It's, to have a career as an artist was not something that was expected. And I guess I defied a lot of the people saying to me, that's not possible. And I just pursued it myself, and here I am. And I just had that will to use my interests in order to sustain a quality of life. And I've been very fortunate to be able to have done that. I think for me, it's very important because of my interest. I've always had an interest in history. And, being in public school, they have an agenda that I was always disappointed with, because we never got rarely got the opportunity to really explore a moment in time in history, like the Civil War and things like that. That's something that still fascinates me, the Civil War. What happened before the Civil War? what happened afterwards. There are reasons why. And I just didn't get enough time to really understand there are other stories going on at the same time that impacted what was actually going on at that moment. And that's part of my ambition with the work that I'm doing, is to really inform people about people and incidents and other things that were going on. And it's, I think it's necessary for people to piece things together. And the more you know about not just what's going on at the moment, but why it happened and what happens afterwards. So and the Civil War is one of those instances where I was always interested with what happened to slaves after the Civil War. You had Reconstruction. And when I've talked to many young people, when they look at my art, ask me questions, they know nothing about Reconstruction, what that was all about. And they just kind of assumed a lot of the ex-slaves went to Harlem, New York. They didn't realize they migrated all over the continent. And they were into all kinds of professions, and they were entrepreneurs, they were teachers, they were scientists, they were mathematicians, they were doctors, they were on and on and on. My ambition to be an artist and to tell stories in pictures was, it wasn't something that I had seen other people do, but I figured that there was somebody out there doing it because of the National Geographics, the stories and the pictures and all of that was written, a lot of the science books and history, there were illustrated images there. Some of the pieces that here in the exhibition, this one piece with a bison herd being surrounded by a pack of wolves is a piece that when I'm watching nature shows, then you're seeing animals interact. And at one time, when I was first started going to museums, I saw paintings done by some of the European artists of action, where animals are interacting with each other. There's wars going on, with the charging soldiers on horseback and that sort of thing. Those are the things that really kept my attention. And I like doing portraiture of wildlife. Those are things that are comfortable for me to do and I enjoy doing. But when I get into telling stories, the action pieces, where you've got animals interacting with each other or human beings interacting with animals, the cowboys and the rearing horses, that sort of thing. That excites me. And I'm thinking it probably excites other people too, as for me to be able to create that from my point of view is something that I know as an artist, artists want to be accepted and they want people to pay attention to what they produce. I know that was, as a kid, whenever I would do action pieces, all of the classmates or, my brother sometimes would get involved. He's like, well, how do you come up with this stuff? I'm like, I just imagine and start drawing. And people were just amazed that I could have a thought and put it down on paper. And then I got a lot of attention from that. But also I know the power of the image, for human beings, is pictures matter. And how well done they are will influence people's perception, people's knowledge. And that is part of the agenda that I have for myself, is to not just entertain but educate at the same time. And I do a lot of research because I want to be very precise when I'm telling a story. With the research that I was doing as a student in high school, that's when I really started to pursue it on my own. I spent time in libraries, and just the card catalog in the libraries, was just fun to me. Just the cross-reference. And I wish I'd had the internet at that time. But it was just fascinating to me to be able to pick up a subject and start to get the cross-references And that would take in all these different directions. And I'm still fascinated with it. I spend a lot of time searching just because I'm fascinated with history and stories. I always imagine like being with Lewis and Clark when they came west, and all of the animals that they encountered, the foliage, the terrain. I'm thinking, man, that would have been really cool to have been on that trip with Lewis and Clark. So yes, those types of things excite me. I've got ideas now about paintings that I want to do from talking to the curator there, Bob. He shared information with me that I was unfamiliar with. So now in my sketchbook last night, I'm sitting down drawing ideas about instances of surrounding Buffalo Soldiers and what they were doing out west that I think would make interesting imagery that's going to educate and probably entertain people too, things that people don't know before. Yeah, being in art school, I was there for 4 years, have a BFA degree in advertising design. I learned a lot about the business of art and also the creative side that I would never have learned if I had not gone to school. There was, and when I do talk to young people about that want to be artists, I've always said to them is that my drive and my point of view, I've always maintained that. That being an artist is more than just, creating something with no end result in mind. And I always had the desire to entertain people and also to educate. And being in art school, my professors were always saying to me they really wanted me to be an educator. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted to do the art. I didn't want to teach it. And they were always suggesting to me to actively have a focus as to where I want to end up. And I wanted to be my own person. I did not want to be on staff in a company working. Ultimately I want to be a fine artist, as I am now, is creating whatever I choose to and presenting it in a way that would appeal to people, to get people to ask questions or to be informed about things that they hadn't really paid attention to before. And starting out as a wildlife artist, when I went to art school, I went to be a wildlife artist. They said, we don't have a category for that. You got to do something else. And I was thinking, well, I don't know anything else other than painting animals. I want to do that. And they said, well, you may have to try advertising then. And so once I chose advertising and I realized advertising encompassed a whole lot of things. And then I was like, okay, maybe I can figure out how to use wildlife art into the advertising, and I did. I was able to do that. And commercial art was one way to make an income. And that was something that was explained to me as how to go about doing that when I was in college. And professors were just saying, you're a professional already because you're asking questions about making an income, being creative, marketing, all of these different things. And I was just thinking, what do I do to make a living? And do things that I enjoy doing and that would also entertain an audience. So that's pretty much the education. And also one of my professors told me that at graduation, he just said, you were a professional artist when you started here at the college, and everybody watched you for 4 years go through all of the classes and perform well, and I enjoyed it. It was just fun. And he said, all we had to do was just guide you because you already had a destiny in mind for yourself. And everything that you chose to do was, I think he said, intuitive, that I was able to choose classes and disciplines in order to get to where I'm at now. Just because he was just saying, you know, I had a direction, and they just guided me and just kind of helped me along. So, being a commercial artist taught me about designing and creating with an end result in mind. If I'm selling a product, you know, you have to. When I did a lot of the advertising work, and my work was on billboards, you know, they would give me a formula. People are driving down the highway, they've got about 3 seconds to see an image. How do you do this? Tell that story that you want people to get in a matter of seconds. And that was fascinating, and it still is to me, to be able to capture people's attention and tell a story in seconds, just without thinking about it. And that's what I try to capture in a lot of the work that I'm here, that's here in the museum. Is, you know, I want you to have a connection to these animals, and the way that I light the animal, the glint in the eye, the position of the head, you know, all of that matters in order to get a reaction, an emotional reaction from the viewer. So I spend a lot of time with that, and I enjoy it. It's to me, it's kind of like a chemist, you know, mixing chemicals together, and you got an idea in mind. And when I have people say to me, "Your work makes me feel good," when they look at my paintings, that's a great compliment. Or if they are uncomfortable with a piece, and that's my ambition, is to make them uncomfortable, okay, then I'm succeeding. Realism, I'm a realist with my art. I'm not a photorealist. I like to capture the essence of the animals that I'm drawing, mainly because I want there to be life in the piece. And I'm very aware when anatomy is off, when other artists are maybe unfamiliar with a species of wildlife, that they're maybe they're not paying attention, you know, just because the finished image that I want to achieve starts with knowing the underlying structure, bone structure, muscle structure. When I was in college, we had anatomy classes. We had life drawing classes. I was taught to draw what you see. And I spent a lot of time at zoos, and I have a library of anatomy books that I refer to on a constant basis because I want the animal to be realistic. I want it to be breathing when the piece is done. And that's a nice comment I've gotten from a number of people that collect my work, is that my animals seem to be breathing. They seem to be alive. They seem to be three-dimensional, even though they're done on a two-dimensional surface. And that is the reason I pursue studying anatomical structure of any animal that I draw. I've been doing this for 50 years, so I have a basic understanding of the anatomy of these animals. And it's important for me to feel comfortable with the end result of a piece for me. Shape of the eye, you know, the highlight that you put into the eye brings life to these creatures. And I spent a lot of time looking at photo reference film and observing shape of eyes with different animals and expressions, you know. It's all part of it for me, is to capture a personality. Also comes through eyes with people, you know, with the human figure, and also with wildlife too. So, mythology around the world, usually there's a creature, there's an animal, there's something that is imaginative that shows up in mythology. So as a kid, watching cartoons.
I'll tell you the story how it happened. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in a distant land far away, there lived the strongest man in the world, and the people's best friend, Hercules.
And then when I would read mythology from Native Americans, African mythology from different cultures, all of that was just like, wow, I can create this. Why does the Medusa have to look like this? That was one artist's interpretation. And then I would do my interpretation of what I thought that should look like. And I could always get discussions started when I was in school. Teachers and in history and so on. Well, the Medusa doesn't look like that. And so, well, who says? Did you ever see it? I never saw it, so this is my imagination. I'm thinking the artist that created this one that you've seen in sculpture and in books, that was that person's point of view. I've got mine. Centaurs and all of that. Those types of things still fascinate me, and I know with all of the discussion going on about aliens and the movies and all these things, it's okay. Artists are creating these creatures, so why can't I do that too? So, when I was doing imaginative work, when I was doing work for the movie studios, back in the 80s, there were films being done on dragons, Dragonheart, just King Kong, those types of things. I was doing a lot of concept work just because I could use my imagination and create storyboards and for filmmakers in order for them to visualize the possibilities of telling a story and having drama and excitement and energy in those stories. I basically say to artists when that question comes up, when they want advice, I'm saying to have a point of view, make a decision about where you want to be 5 years from now, where you want to be 10 years from now, okay? And that's where I started, is I had an idea of I want to entertain people, and I want to be careful about how I approach it. And once I go through the analysis of where the end result in 5 years, then everything that I do is about getting there. And then I put it, another goal in mind. But the thing is, just keep going. If you give it some thought and practical, and be very practical with it, and pursue it, you're going to have disappointments, you will have successes, but it's about just believing that you can get there. And everybody gets there in a different way. It's not any one way to accomplish things, but have a clear idea of where you want to be and who you want to be, and just keep going. That's what I'm still going. I'm not done yet. So.